Hi, everybody. I'm Tabitha, and today we're talking about research. As writers, we research a lot of things. We research before we write, we research while we're writing, and sometimes we even research when we thought the book was done and we're revising or editing. Research is a wonderful tool, and one of the best tools we have today is Google. Google will give us answers to all kinds of really specific questions. Some of the things I've had to Google include lunar cycles or plants that grow during certain months. But you can also turn to Google for advice from experts you've never met. This is wonderful if what you're looking for is something small and specific in your story that doesn't require a firsthand, but maybe does require an expert. One example that comes to mind for me is signs you may be in an abusive relationship. I'm not, but one of my characters might be, and I needed to make sure I built that into the story. But today I want to talk about research we might do outside of Google. One of the things we may turn outside of the internet for in our research is jobs. We interact with a lot of jobs and careers on a daily basis, but having never done those jobs ourselves, we may not have a full understanding of what it takes to be in that job. Perfect examples that come to mind are police officers, teachers, firefighters, doctors. Those are people who have very specialized training. We encounter them all the time, but that doesn't mean we know what it's like to be them. So if you have careers like this in your book and they are important to your story, that doesn't mean they're the main character, but something that person does drives your plot in some way, it can be important to get a firsthand account from someone who does that job. Personally, I like to reach out on my favorite social media sites, Twitter, Facebook, and ask if anyone is familiar with one of those. Or I send an email to a local organization and ask if there's somebody who would be willing to talk to me, either through email, through phone, or in person. These conversations are wonderful to have with someone who actually does the career. During these conversations, I'm not pushing my book. I'm not telling them all about my main character. All I'm doing is asking questions that'll help me better understand their day-to-day job, their instant reactions to things, and their protocols that I maybe need to make sure are in my book. I may ask one or two questions about how they would react to a situation like the kind they'd see in my book. But remember that this person is not a writer, and we're not asking for their opinion about how we wrote our story. We're just trying to understand how their job works. Okay, the next one that I tend to turn away from Google for is information on historical events that I'm either using in my book or that I think are similar to something I'm going to be using in my book. By that, I mean that we know that a lot of times history repeats itself. If you see something happen, you can compare it to another event that happens later. Wars are a great example of this. We see wars happening over and over and over again. They have a lot in common, a lot of the same reasons why they were started. So sometimes I'll do a little research on other things that are like mine, even if I'm writing in a fantasy realm. I don't like to do that research all on Google. Here's why. I found that if I go to the nonfiction section of my library, sometimes I even go to the children's nonfiction section and look for different books on the same topic, I'll find lots of different takes that give me both sides. This can be way more beneficial than going to Google, where I might only get one side. Plus, oftentimes, I don't know about you, but if I'm online researching something, you can fall down these crazy rabbit holes and find that you've spent half an hour looking for this and you are completely off topic. It happens to me a lot when I'm researching history. But if I have a book in my hand to hold and read, I'm more likely to stay on task, finish the book, and learn what I meant to learn. Another thing I tend to go out of the internet and off Google for when I'm doing my research is stuff related to diversity. So I'm talking different religions that maybe you don't practice or have exposure to yourself, different sexual preferences that maybe you don't have exposure to yourself, different handicaps or difficulties, learning disabilities, things like that. This is not stuff that we all don't have exposure to all of those on a daily basis, but we want to get them right in our books. So I'm talking about researching and having conversations with people, not necessarily sensitivity readers, which are two different things. Sensitivity readers will read what you wrote about those different lifestyles, different disabilities, different religions, and they'll tell you if you captured it right. I'm talking about researching it. So actually sitting down and having a face-to-face or voice-to-voice conversation with somebody who does have experience with that. That's something I go outside of Google for. So again, I would reach out to people. I try to do, friend of a friend or organizations that people have heard of or worked with rather than just putting a general message out there on social media. But if putting a message out on social media is the only way you have to connect with those people, then I say go for it. But I start with emails first, and then I try to have voice-to-voice or face-to-face conversations with people. Again, these are not about my book. I'm not telling them about my main character or who my main character is or why I need their expertise necessarily. I'm just explaining that I'm a writer and I'm writing a book and I want to try to capture your religion correctly. And so what can you tell me about growing up in a household that had that religion? Or when did you know that this is the religion you believed? What are the important tenets of your religion? Or what holidays does your religion observe? Sometimes it's nice to just have these kinds of conversations with people. They like to talk about their experiences, and then those experiences can shape who I'm putting into my book. That doesn't mean I copy the person I meet directly. It just means that I can use what I gain from them to help shape these characters. So that's another research that I like to do in the real world and outside of the internet. Okay, that is it for me and my research advice. So remember, Google it if it's something that you think has one side or a quick, easy answer. Always go for face-to-face or voice-to-voice if you're looking for job expertise or diversity expertise and you just want to hear that person's side of it. And of course, you can check out the nonfiction section of your library, even if it's the children's nonfiction section, to get different takes and different sides of things that you're researching. Those are my big pieces of advice. I'm going to drop a few of my favorite websites for color and words for things just in the comments in case you want those. You feel free to drop your own down there if you're a writer and you have some that you absolutely love and go back to, because it will save me the time of having to Google it myself. You guys are awesome. Thank you for being here. Keep plotting the path to your dreams. Don't forget to subscribe to the page, and I will see you next week. Bye.